Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Tanks with the mighty Jingles. I am very proud to present the AT2 Tier 5 British tank destroyer. This thing has 203mm of armour at the front, 102mm of armour at the sides and rear. You put this thing into a Tier 5 game and it's like kicking puppies. And that's the focus of today's video. Today we're looking at some of those machines that, while they might not have it all their own way when they're not top tier, when they are top tier in a battle, it's like letting a fox loose in a hen house. And the AT2 is definitely, very definitely, one of those machines. It's not particularly hot stuff in a tier 6 or a tier 7 game, but when this thing's top tier, 203mm of frontal armour, there's very little that can kill it, unless they get to close range. If it can be said to have any weaknesses, it's that the gun is, well, average. That B1 over there knows all about having an average gun. Even if he's firing premium ammunition at me, he only has 98mm of penetration. And that's at 100 meters range. He's got no chance whatsoever of penetrating one of these things from the front. And I just took a hit from artillery there on the gun. This thing has so much armour at tier 5 that even artillery, you fit this thing with a spall liner and it just laughs, absolutely laughs at artillery fire. Took another artillery hit, no damage. Covenanter on my left, don't care. I'll quite happily turn my back on a Covenanter to deal with the 3001H, because the Covenanter just cannot hurt me. Not even from the rear. 103mm of rear armour on this little thing. Yeah, just hold on pal, I'll get to you in a second. Sounds like artillery just missed me again. Not that it matters, artillery can hit me and I really don't care. Not that this thing is completely immune from artillery. The engine deck to the rear of the gun position, that flat bit at the back, if artillery lands on that, it's going to cause you problems. But anywhere else, this thing just shrugs off artillery fire, particularly tier 5 and below. T1 heavy over there. This is where the gun starts to underperform, and this is why at this point I'm switching to APCR ammunition to be able to reliably penetrate that T1 heavy. It can be expensive as all hell running this thing with premium ammunition, however. You really should use it sparingly, but you do need to use, well, you need to have a reasonable supply of it if you're going to use it at all, because the damage per shot of the gun is so incredibly low that on those targets where you have to use premium ammunition to be effective, you have to use a lot of premium ammunition on them to kill them. And artillery does no damage yet again. Is it any wonder I love this thing so much? I don't think I've ever been in a machine that gets hit so consistently by artillery to such little effect. You'd think the guy in the birch gun would be taking the hint by now and start shooting at something he can actually damage. But hey, no. Oh man, that's probably why I love this machine so much. And you know, that's the AT2 all over. They see me rolling, they be hating. I've played this thing in battles on Prokhorovka when it's top tier, and you go to the traditional tank destroyer side of the map, the western end of the map, the north-south road that runs up and down the western end of the map, and got bored after a minute or so of nothing happening, and it's no problem. You want to find out where the enemy tanks are? Tier 5 maximum game on Prokhorovka, and you're in an AT2, just drive up that north-south road. You'll soon find out where the enemy tanks are when they start bouncing shots off the front of you and giving their position away. This thing really just does not take damage. You'll have noticed throughout this replay, people have been shooting at me, nothing's happened, they get desperate, they switch to high explosive. At long range, or even at point blank range, it really doesn't matter, and start shooting HE, trying to do some damage, and it's having no effect, as you can quite clearly see. 76, 75mm and below high explosive has no chance whatsoever of doing any damage through 203mm of armour. Even the commander's hatch on the top of this thing is 103mm thick. And that's why driving this thing in a tier 5 game is like kicking puppies. So, a nice little high caliber and brothers in arms for myself, Rita, and Merlanthus in our platoon there. Rita in the T49, another favourite tier 5 puppy kicking machine. Difference being that you can actually kill a T49. And of course, no video about kicking puppies would be complete without the Panzer II J. Yes, it's me and Quickie Baby in our Panzer II Js. This machine isn't quite as rare as it used to be. I think since I started putting videos up of it, people have been finding ways to get their hands on it. This is the premium German light tank at tier 3 that has the same armour, or better armour, than the KV-1 Russian tier 5 heavy tank. There is nothing light about the Panzer II J. It does, however, have a terrible, terrible gun. It has a gun that a tier 1 tank would be ashamed to use. And when I say this gun is terrible, this is me using premium APCR ammunition on the side of an M7 Priest artillery. And I only penetrate him with 2 shots, and that's with the premium ammunition. I really can't afford to play this thing very often because I always run a loss when I'm driving this tank. And when I say a loss, I'm talking 30 to 40,000 credits loss, regardless of the score and the amount of damage that I do, because the ammunition for this thing is just so incredibly expensive. But it's totally worth it, because this thing is just so funny. Hello, somebody actually managed to do some damage to me. Oh, there's a T-82 shooting at me from the rear. Panzer II J does not care about T-82s. Well, now I'll just finish off your little friend. Of course, there are machines at tier 3 who do pose a significant threat to this thing. It's not completely invincible. And there's one of them. Now, this guy is, of course, firing premium ammunition at me. He's just penetrated me with 2 shots of APCR, and I'm certainly not complaining about it. It would be hypocritical in the extreme to be driving one of these tanks loaded out with premium ammo and complaining about somebody firing APCR back at me. It's an occupational hazard when you drive a Panzer II J. People who know what this thing is like will fire premium ammo at you. Can't complain about it, you just have to learn to deal with it, I'm afraid. And it's entirely fair, because this is a ridiculously overpowered tank. It's a tier 3 light tank with KV-1 armour, and it gets premium matchmaking. It will only ever get into tier 4 games. It is an absolutely absurd little tank, and I love it to bits. Getting your hands on one of these things requires a boxed gift copy of World of Tanks from the Russian server. I last saw one of them going on eBay for $360, so let me know how you get on with that. Of course, the Panzer II J is not the only ultra-rare Tier 3 gift tank that I currently have warming up a spot in my garage. This is the BT-SV, and to get this you also need a boxed gift set of World of Tanks from the Russian server. This thing isn't nearly as ridiculous as the Panzer II J, however. It is ridiculously fast, it has ridiculously well-sloped armour, and the gun isn't bad. Gun depression, terrible. The armour, while not being nearly as thick as that of the Panzer II J, is sloped at 45 degrees pretty much everywhere. So effectively it is as well armoured as the Panzer II J, and it's about 5 times as fast, and it has a better gun. Is the BT-SV as much fun as the Panzer II J? Oh yeah, definitely. I love this tank, but it plays completely differently, and not just because of the speed. The armour is not particularly thick, but it's very, very heavily sloped. And so careful angling is required in order to beat enemy tanks when you're driving this thing. It is by no means invulnerable. People do not need premium ammunition to be able to penetrate and kill this thing. It's all down to how you drive it, as opposed to the Panzer II J, which just keeps rolling and keeps bouncing shots. This thing, you do actually need to have some idea of what you're doing. Now, a T-18 tank destroyer, for example, these little things, with their 75mm howitzer, particularly when they're firing high explosive anti-tank premium ammo, chew up Panzer II Js. But because the armour on this thing is sloped, most shots that hit this thing don't even get a chance to roll for penetration. They hit at such an extreme angle, they just auto-bounce. And that's why this machine, much more so than the Panzer II J, is the connoisseur's weapon of choice for when it comes to hunting down and killing professional seal clubbers in T-18 tank destroyers firing gold ammo. It's definitely a lot more exciting driving this thing as well, and not just because of the speed, because you can be penetrated by anybody shooting at you. The turret in particular is an easy target. As I came down over that bump in the ground, the VAE was able to penetrate my side armour as it flattened out towards him, and it's only 20mm thick. The fact that anybody gets a lucky shot on you, regardless of what gun they're using, this thing can be penetrated, and it only has 240 health, makes driving this thing much more of a white-knuckle ride than the Panzer II J. It's also got a perfectly adequate gun, as you can see. So I don't feel quite as dirty when I'm driving this thing as I do the Panzer II J. I do feel that, you know, the guys that I'm going up against at least have a competitive chance against me when I'm driving this thing. I don't feel quite like so much of a seal clubber as I do when I'm in the Panzer II J. I mean, I am. Make no mistake about it, this is a seal clubber's machine. The title of this video is Kicking Puppies after all. But I don't feel like quite as much of a seal clubber when I'm driving this tank, and therein lies the difference. I admit that's not much of a difference, but it helps me sleep at night. And that is how easy it is to get ace tanker in this thing, because there's nobody driving it. Not like Circumflex is there in his dirty, dirty, filthy Panzer II J, which is surprisingly difficult to get master tanker on. Not so the BTSV, because it's a good clean tank. Not like those seal clubbers like Circon in his Panzer II J. All of which brings us on to our final replay, and it's the Matilda, the British Tier 4 medium tank. And now, I'm sure you've all seen those videos, hell, I've shown you some of those videos, where a Matilda, when it's top tier, surrounded by 10 enemy tanks, just doesn't take any damage whatsoever and kills them all. This is not one of those videos. The Matilda is legendarily tough when it's top tier. It has 75mm of armour at the front, 70 at the side, 50 at the rear. The turret, 75mm all round. But this is a tier 5 game. So technically, this doesn't really qualify as kicking puppies. Well, it shouldn't, and yet somehow it totally does. This is a very tier 5 game. More than half of all of the tanks involved in this battle are higher tier than I am in my Matilda, and entirely capable of killing me. Which is what makes what happens all the more amusing. Now, the Matilda, with the 2-pounder gun, with the Little John adapter, does have very, very good penetration, but the damage output is terrible. What that means is that when you're not top tier in a Matilda, in order to do any appreciable amount of damage, you have to keep firing the gun, and that exposes you to a lot of return fire. And that's absolutely fine when this thing's top tier, because it does have good armour for a medium tier 4 tank. Not so much when you're in a tier 5 game. Of course, I'm not worried about this Valentine. His gun is terrible, and I can kill him easily, but he's not the only one there. Panzer III 4 over there. None of the other guys on the island can hit me in this position. Panzer III 4 is the only threat. plant one into him, and then he gets taken out by a 3-inch howitzer shell from the Wolverine. Here, however, is where I first run into a set of problems. Initially I start shooting at this Chi-Ha and hit him, but I'm actually starting to take penetrating fire from over here. There's a Panzer IV, a Marder II, another Matilda, and a Panzer I all shooting at me. And while my hit log is going nuts every time this Panzer I hits me with his machine gun, he's doing no damage whatsoever. All of these other tanks shooting at me, only the Matilda has been able to penetrate, because of the way this tank is angled as I've come down this slope. The Panzer IV did no damage. That Matilda only penetrated me twice, took out my ammo rack with the second hit. And they're all dead. How the hell did I survive that? So what was shooting at me there? Okay, Panzer I, no problem. Valentine, no problem. Panzer III 75mm gun, problem. Panzer IV, 75mm gun, problem. Another Matilda, problem. And yet they're all dead, and I'm not. But hold on a minute, mystery solved. Closer examination of the Panzer IV reveals that he was equipped with the 105mm howitzer and was firing armour-piercing ammunition instead of high explosive, which only has 64mm of penetration. So yeah, he qualifies as a puppy, and I gave him a damn good kicking, and that's why this video is also included in the Kicking Puppies compilation. So howitzers can be fun, but make sure you're using the right ammunition with them. And on that bombshell, I bid you a fond farewell, take care, have fun playing whatever you're playing, and I'll catch you next time.